Hey folks, Kevin here. Well, it's February 25th, 2022, and I thought I'd share some of my activities financially the yesterday and what I've been planning for a while. Certainly, right now, the headlines are what's going on in Ukraine with the Russian incursion. Our thoughts and prayers go out to all of the individuals, all of the citizens and the soldiers from both sides that are dealing with this terrible issue. And this certainly has an absolute global impact on all of us. And so today, what I thought I'd do is share one of the things I did financially yesterday. But first, let me just go ahead and so here's a chart of gas prices. This is from GasBuddy, gasbuddy.com charts, and you can go to this area here, and this is the U.S. gas prices, and you can put in other countries as well. And this is over the last year, so 1 year's time. So you could see this time last year, the average gas price in the United States was $2.69, and right now it's $3.59. And we anticipate with with all of the changes that are about the restrictions that are going to be imposed on Russia. Globally, it's going to affect fuel prices, and of course, fuel prices are going to affect manufacturing, travel, all different businesses and all. The other thing is that for quite some time now, we've been monitoring what's going on with the inflation rate. So at the whitehouse.gov, they have a historical perspective of the consumer price index, or the rate of inflation. So we look back here, these two large peaks in the 70s. These were affected by oil prices significantly. Actually, in this first peak here, I was working in a gas station, and we actually had alternate plates. We'd only fuel up vehicles that had even or odd plates, depending on the day of the based on the numerical number of the day of the week. So things were absolutely crazy then. And Thea and I were both young adults during the second peak here, and so the inflation rate affected credit cards, auto loans, mortgages, everything that you could imagine, student loans, all of those things. So we've been in a relatively wonderful phase where inflation rates have been down, and just recently, Jerome Powell has talked about, because of the printing of the quantitative easing and all of the printing of money, that inflation has been creeping up. And so Jerome Powell had been talking recently, over the last few months, over the last month, let's say, that he's going to be more aggressive about ticking up the inflation rate again. And so that's really affected the markets. So here we are looking over basically the last month. You can see the Dow Jones, the S&P 500, and the NASDAQ. All of these have been affected pretty significantly. And as a result, we see the prices. This is just looking over 1 month of the Dow Jones as well. So all of these things are signals. I'm always looking at the macroeconomics, trying to anticipate what I should do personally. So many people have been so afraid that they've been selling their shares or investments, maybe going to gold and silver, some going to cryptocurrency, but cryptocurrency has also been significantly affected. And people get really nervous. And it's been said for many years, when people are very fearful, it's a good time to be more aggressive. or when people are really aggressive, when the market's really booming, maybe it's time to step back some. And I think those are really good statements for those individuals who are traders, people who are trying to buy low and sell high, and that's something that I don't do. And so I guess what I wanted to get to today is the value of long-term investments. So we are completely invested long-term into predominantly one company, and that would be completely nuts. And this is not investment advice for anyone at this point. It is risky unless you absolutely know the company inside and out, and you're paying very close attention to the fundamentals of that company. There were employees that worked at Enron who had their whole retirement accounts set up in invested in Enron, and when Enron collapsed, people suffered tremendously. So everyone has to be. What I would suggest is that everyone get more interested in and learn as much as you can about your retirement. And if you're not investing at any age, I think it's time to start investing. So one of the things that is, this is the Tax Cut and Jobs Act changes as far as what tax brackets we fall into. So in 2017 and before, on the left-hand side here, these were the relative tax brackets. So 10%, 15%, 25, 28, 33, 35, and 39.6. This is nowhere near as high as the tax brackets have been historically, but this is where we were in 2017 with the Tax Cut and Jobs Act that went into effect in 2018. The tax brackets really got reduced, and that really helped low income and low middle income families, even high income families, pay less taxes, which has been absolutely fantastic. So you see, instead of 39.6%, it's 37%. Instead of 15%, it was 12%, and so on and so forth. This is all this was all a temporary act. This will all phase out in 2025. So I'm always looking at the macroeconomics and what we can see. So it's very likely that in 2026, we will be paying at least the 2017 tax brackets will be in those levels, with the inflation that's going on, with all the money that's been printed, and with the global economic impacts. It's very likely that excuse me, it's very likely pardon me, it's very likely that our tax brackets are going to be higher. So in our situation, Thea and I are in our withdrawal phase. So when it comes to your investments, you have your building phases during hopefully starting off when you're in your early 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and building wealth, investing for your retirement days. Once you're retired, you're in the withdrawal phase. So that's where we are at this point. So it's unfortunate that right now many people who are just retiring at this point, we're seeing the value of the market, the value of their invested dollars decreasing rather significantly, and that has a significant impact, especially when you so as the market value of the shares that you own, you have to sell more shares if you're dependent on those IRA withdrawals or your 401k withdrawals. So I think it's really important to try and get as much into a tax-free account like the Roth IRAs, also the health savings account, but I'm not going to talk about that today. So one of the things that I'm always looking for are opportunities when people are really afraid and they're selling their shares in the market and the market relative values are dropping. Certainly many people say that's a good buying opportunity, and I agree. So if you're in the wealth building phases of life, those are great times. As long as you know what you're doing, those are good times when everybody's pulling their money out of the market is to start investing. I always recommend that you really do due diligence and understand the fundamentals of the company, or have a financial advisor that's working in your best interests, or picking potentially index funds. I don't think index funds are going to be the best thing for the next couple of decades, because they're, for the most part, most of them are holding shares in numerous companies that probably are going to be disrupted by the disruptive technologies that we're invested in. So one of the things to help decrease it, to have more buying power in the future, is to have more money in your Roth accounts. So the difference between you can't contribute quite as much to a Roth IRA as you can to your traditional IRA if you're having money taken out each month. And so right now, if you're less than 50 years old, the contribution limits each year is $6,000 a year per individual, $12,000 for a couple, or $14,000 if you're a couple over 50. And so the other things about one really important thing about your Roth IRA, your Roth IRAs or Roth 401ks, is that your contributions, they aren't taken out. You have to pay taxes at the time that you're putting the money into the Roth fund, whether it's a Roth IRA or Roth 401k. So in other words, you aren't getting the benefits of lowering your adjusted gross income so that you're paying less taxes each year when you're making that contribution. But that money, the principal and the interest, grow hopefully significantly over many years as it sits inside of the Roth account, invested appropriately and wisely into some good companies or index funds. So Roth IRAs, for the most part, are excellent choices for young people. Like my kids and grandkids are investing in their Roths at this point. The benefit of the Roth is that both the principal, the amount that you put into the Roth account, and all of the extra funds, the interest, and it's compounded interest, so it keeps growing and growing and growing over time. All of that comes out tax-free. If you were to pass away, that isn't taxed when it goes to your beneficiaries. Excuse me. So investing in a Roth account is really important. The earlier, the better. So what about positions like us? So we're older, we're in retirement now. We can't invest into a Roth account, but we can do what's called a Roth conversion. A Roth conversion is when you take money from your tax deferred account, like a 401k, 403b, or your rollover IRA or your independent IRA. If you take that tax deferred money and you convert it into a Roth, during that time period, that year, you have to pay the taxes on the amount that you roll over. So as I mentioned, right now, because of the fears of inflation and Jerome Powell going ahead and raising interest rates, that's going to make more and more people be more hesitant. Companies aren't going to be able to take, if they have to pay more for their loans, they do less investment in generating more income. They don't buy as many robots. They don't buy more land because the interest rates are too high in the loans. Excuse me. So companies won't necessarily be investing and doing as much growth. So therefore, you won't necessarily be getting as much growth opportunity in your investments. So when things like this happen, the war has caused people to be very afraid. The consumer price index and the fear of inflation, that's caused people to be very fearful. So a lot of people have taken their money out of the markets at this point, and therefore the costs of the individual shares are less. So as I mentioned before, that's a really good time for people who want to invest in the market to invest when the markets are at a low. I do not believe in timing the market. However, there are some circumstances. So being retired, being dependent on a fixed income coming from our IRAs, our individual retirement accounts, which are tax deferred, and the value of those dollars going down. In other words, like we're heavily invested in Tesla. So Tesla has gone down to about $800 back here. In January, it was almost $1,200, $1,199.78 per share. So if I had sold the shares at that point in time, I'd have a heck of a lot more cash at home than selling it today at $800 per share. But this gives me a great opportunity. So I know that many people are looking at this and saying, oh, what's going to happen? This is terrible, especially those people who have just retired. They figured they had enough money, and now the value of their portfolios has decreased significantly. I look at this and look at the macroeconomics and realizing that tax rates are almost certainly going to increase. We know that in just a couple of years, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act tax brackets are going to kick back to the higher tax brackets. So we're going to be paying more taxes. Inflation is going to increase as well. We've done all this printing of money. The value of the dollar has decreased as well. So all of these things and the global economic changes. Who knows what Putin is going to do? Whether he will pull back and from Ukraine eventually, or will he try and proceed and go for some of the NATO countries that are surrounding it, in which case we'd get involved. Who knows what's going to happen? I can't predict what's going to happen on the global economy, and I can't predict what countries are going to do, but I can take the steps necessary to try and reduce my tax burden in the future. And since the value of the main company that we're invested in dropped significantly, yesterday I elected to do a Roth conversion. So I took as many shares as I thought I could pay taxes on, and I converted it. I didn't sell the shares. I just took it from one of my Fidelity IRA accounts and put it into a Fidelity Roth IRA account. So what does that mean for the rest of this year? It means that I've got to pay, besides paying my taxes on every IRA distribution, the withdrawals that I take out every month or so to pay bills, I also am going to be paying quarterly taxes. So I'm going to determine how much taxes I'm going to owe being in the tax bracket that we're in, and I'm going to divide that up into 4 different aliquots, so that in April 15th I'll have an estimated tax bill for New York State, our state that we live in, and for the IRS. And the same thing is broken up quarterly. So all of this stuff can be challenging and daunting and overwhelming, especially if you're in retirement and dependent on these retirement income as well as a Social Security for many people. And the fears of saying, okay, we just went through a pandemic. We saw there were shortages. There's going to be potentially shortages. We know about the chip shortages, plastics. I've talked about steel prices, lumber prices, all of these things which affect everything that we're doing here on our site. But everyone's an individual. I would say, look at the global situation and try and anticipate how things are going to be affecting you in the future and plan accordingly. So like for us, one of the things I had plans for, I've talked recently about suddenly making a lot of investments in heavy equipment this last year, and the reason was because I could foresee the prices of all of these pieces of equipment going up significantly, over 15%. And that's like a 15% tax if I had waited to purchase them. And I do anticipate that these prices will continue to go up. I think rental prices will continue to go up as well. And you know, people this time of year in cold climates like we're in are potentially going to struggle to pay their heating bills as well. So there are many opportunities in the future when we look at all of these situations, as opposed to looking at it as doom and gloom. Certainly, it is terrible what's going on in Ukraine right now. I know that many Russian citizens are protesting, and it's a ticklish situation for them to protest. But there's good people in Russia. There's really good people in Ukraine. And it's unfortunate that this is happening. I can understand why Putin does it at one level. I think he's afraid of the Ukraine becoming part of NATO, and it's a big concern. But also, it's terrible that these things are happening, and there's things that we just don't have control of as far as individual citizens. We can always prep, you know, like I'm always talking about. Learn how to garden, learn how to invest in the various investment categories that I've talked about in other videos. Invest in yourself. So that's about it. So recently yesterday I did a Roth conversion that I think we can handle paying the estimated taxes on this year. This would be a good time for there's people who have so much in their traditional or their taxable account that they could consider doing a Roth conversion as well, or doing more contributions to the Roth accounts. And I'll make another video about health savings accounts in the future. That even has more benefits than the Roth your Roth accounts as well. So without going any further, I really appreciate everyone watching this. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. I am not a financial advisor. What I do with my finances would be absolutely crazy, and I certainly wouldn't recommend it for people. I'm anal retentive. I have many spreadsheets. I'm always doing the research and looking for opportunities where others see the dark clouds. So that's it for today's video, folks. Take care and stay safe, and think positive thoughts, and say prayers, and do all we can to help out those people in need all around the world. Take care now. Bye-bye.